Sinazamuye ijwi ryanjye hejuru mumenyesha iby'ibi bihe nafashe n'umwanya ndaguhamagara mumenyesha iby'isarura mubwira iby'ubwami ko bwegereje witegure.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Hortense Masamba. I'm a journalist and I'm a reporter at Amjambo Africa. Today we are going to talk about a very, very important subject. It's about the work authorization for the asylum seeker. So 3 months ago, back in June, the USCIS announced a lot of change in employment authorization. But the mostly change we're going to talk about here is the waiting time period. The one went from 150 days to 365. And this change is affecting the employment eligibility requirement for the asylum seeker. So to have a better understanding of this subject or the outline on the complexity, that's why we invite 2 experts so they can give us the whole idea about the subject. So I'm pleased to welcome Julia Brown. She's an outreach and advocacy attorney at the Immigrant Legal Advocacy Project, ILAP. Welcome. And my second guest is Deborah Ibonwa. She's a policy and legal advocate and Maine Equal Justice. So together, they will shed the light on some area we do not understand very well or we need more information. And also they will help us to understand the impact of this rule change in immigration family. But before we get to the subject, let me give some information to the French speaker, the people who do not speak French, because at the end of the meeting, I have to give a summary so they can understand. Pour ceux-là qui ne parlent pas anglais, je vais devoir donner un résumé à la fin de ce meeting pour que vous puissiez avoir une idée de quoi il est question par rapport au prolongement pour l'attente de l'autorisation du travail. Yeah, thank you very much. So let's get started. My first question will be, Julia, if you don't mind introducing yourself to people and also give us the mission of your organization, what you work for.
Sure. My name is Julia Brown. I'm the Advocacy and Outreach Director at the Immigrant Legal Advocacy Project, or ILAP, and we are Maine's only comprehensive statewide immigration legal services organization. We have offices in Portland and Lewiston, but currently we are working remotely and we are still we're ready to help. And you can go to our website, ilapmaine.org, and click on the Get Legal Help button or Asylum Information button for more information.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll ask the same question for Deb. If you can introduce yourself and give us the mission of your organization, please.
My name is Deborah Ibonwa. I'm a policy and legal advocate at Maine Equal Justice. We're a nonprofit civil legal aid and economic justice organization working to increase economic security, opportunity, and equity for the low-income population of Maine.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So now the main issue we're going to talk about here today is the change. The one just went into effect on August the 25th. So Julia, would you please describe the recent change on the work, the rule change for the asylum seeker for the work permit?
Yes. So on August 25th, like you said, a new rule went into effect. And that is a way that the government can change policy for immigration. So the new rule makes it much harder for asylum seekers to get employment authorization, also known as a work permit. The new rules are very complicated, so what I describe here might not go into all the details. So the new rule requires asylum applicants to wait 365 days after applying for asylum before they can apply for a work permit. That's double the time that people used to have to wait to apply. It used to be 180 days. More troubling even than that is that the new rule denies work permits for asylum seekers if they fall into a few categories. So, for example, there is a 1-year deadline after you come to the United States to file for asylum. And there are exceptions to that deadline, and people do file after that deadline sometimes. But this rule says that people who file for asylum after that 1-year deadline are denied, they're barred from getting a work permit at all. And so one really important detail, if you think this might apply to you, is that is only if you filed your asylum application after August 25th. So if you did file a year late or later than that 1 year, but before that deadline, then this does not apply to you. Another bar is for folks who enter the United States outside of an official port of entry. And that is also for people who entered the United States outside of an official port of entry after August 25th. So this only applies to people who entered the United States after August 25th. And there is an exception for that. So they have to show that they presented themselves to immigration officers within 2 days after entering the United States, that they told the officer that they intended to apply for asylum, and that they had good cause for the way they entered the United States. We don't know how they're applying this rule yet, but we do know that it's a very narrow exception. So for the most part, people who enter outside of the port of entry after August 25th will be barred from having a work permit. Another bar is for asylum applicants who cause a delay in their case, and this is what the government is calling that. So before, there used to be an asylum work permit clock that everyone would check. So when the clock started ticking for the number of days after you applied for asylum, before you could file for your work permit, some things could stop that clock. And that would include missing an appointment, missing an interview, asking for more time, etc. That clock is no longer in place. And so what the government is now saying is that your work permit will be denied if there are delays caused by you in your asylum case when you file for your initial work permit. So we have no idea how they're going to apply this. We haven't seen it yet because it just started. But some of those delays are similar to the delays before. So missing a fingerprinting appointment, asking for more time to find a lawyer, or other delays like that. One really important thing to know is this does not apply to renewals. So if you're renewing, then these so-called delays will not impact your renewal. Finally, there are bars for asylum applicants who have committed certain crimes. And so the new rule expands the list of crimes that would make an asylum seeker ineligible for a work permit, and includes crimes both in and out of the United States. If you think that might apply to you, then you should talk to an immigration lawyer because it's very complicated, the long list, and some apply before August 25th and some after. So as you can see, these are incredibly detailed, complex rules that are just making it more difficult for asylum seekers to get their work authorization.
Okay, thank you, Julia. I'm gonna come to Deb. When you hear all those changes, Julia just specify. So working with the general assistant, how do you think this one will affect the asylum seeker?
Yeah, so I think it's important for me to just summarize what the GA law says, and GA, I mean general assistance, what it says right now, and then I can go back and explain how this will impact folks. So right now, the statute says that you're eligible if you're not a citizen, as long as you are pursuing some lawful process for immigration relief, or if you're here as a lawfully present person. But if you are someone that falls under the first category as someone that's pursuing lawful process, then you are subject to a 24-month limit to continue receiving general assistance. So the way that the state is interpreting what lawfully present means is someone with a green card or a work permit. And so you just heard from Julia how hard that's going to be now. And so the problem is now the pool of people who are going to fall under the pursuing lawful process category is going to be bigger, and the pool of people who are going to be subject to this time limit is going to significantly grow larger. And there's also an issue about the pursuing lawful process category and how that's defined. That is defined as someone who has it's defined as someone who has applied for some form of immigration relief within the 12 months, within 12 months of arrival. Okay. The problem with that is that the 12-month time limit only applies to asylum seekers, right? And so what this ends up doing is that it ties GA directly to asylum seekers and kind of forgets that there are other forms of immigration relief. Correct. But so those people, and because of the backlog and the current state of our immigration system right now under this administration, but also previously, it's very difficult for people to actually get a pending asylum application within 12 months of arrival. And it's just going to get harder, as you can tell by all these rules changes that keep happening. So we're worried for that reason, that people are going to lose their eligibility for GA, period, but also because of that 12-month language, but also because of these new work permit rules that will increase the pool of people who are subject to the time limit. And for a lot of people, GA, especially people who are newly arrived in the United States, general assistance is sometimes the only resource for them, or it's just one of maybe just a couple of resources that they have access to be able to get basic necessities and feed their kids and feed their family. And it's detrimental to them, but it's also detrimental in the long run, if you think about it, to our economy, because we have a large group of folks who won't be able to work, and that just counters what the goals are for Maine's economy in the long term, I think. So that is pretty much the gist of my concern.
Thank you, Deb. I'm going to go back to Julia. Among those changes, do we have can we have some information about the next change, the one will take place on October the 2nd regarding the fees? Can you give us more detail about that?
Yes, so this is another attack on immigration from our administration that's in charge currently. And so this is a rule that will greatly increase fees for immigrant applicants, and then also will get rid of something called a fee waiver for many applicants. And a fee waiver is a crucial part of our immigration system that allows people who aren't wealthy, essentially, to file for immigration benefits like a green card or citizenship or a work permit. And so if you are eligible because your income is lower than a certain percentage, then you're able to file a fee waiver and show the proof that your income is at a certain level, and then you don't have to pay those exorbitant fees. Okay. Unfortunately, the government is trying to get rid of those fee waivers for most applicants. And so on October 2nd, a rule is going to take effect unless a court stops it from happening. And that will increase filing fees for a lot of applications, add filing fees, and then eliminate fee waivers. And so ones that are relevant to asylum is that for the first time, we are going to have a filing fee for an asylum application. Almost no countries worldwide charge money for an asylum application, but the United States on October 2nd will start charging $50 for an asylum application. And we all know how much $50 is. That's a lot of money. And there is no fee waiver for that. And we talked a little bit about the very strict deadline for the 1-year filing deadline. So this will have a huge impact on families if it goes into place on October 2nd. Another issue is that work permits are becoming more expensive and they are not waivable. So you can't get that fee waiver for a work permit. And so that includes asylum seekers with their initial work permits will now cost the full cost, and then the renewals will cost the full cost. And there's no way to waive that fee under this rule. So this is clearly going to impact asylum seeking families.
Okay, thank you very much. And Deb, what kind of advocacy work has been undergoing to help the family to face those rule change?
So we are working with ILAP and other partner organizations, immigration leaders, people from the community, to advocate and to do the outreach to reach out to both legislators and the general public. GEA is not something that people really know about in Maine. And so we're going to really try to amp up the outreach and education aspect of that, but especially at the legislative level, at the department. And we have reached out to the department, and we are hoping to come up with a solution that works. Because yeah, I mean, especially in this time of crisis, we have multiple crises that we're going through, especially for people of color and immigrants. It's just, we just really want people to feel that urgency, not to cause a panic, but I think this is really the best time for people to educate themselves, and that is the priority. So we are developing advocacy efforts to try for a rule change, so that maybe the definition of lawfully present can be loosened or expanded, but whatever is necessary to make sure that people access their basic resources.
Thank you, Deb. When I hear about that, that means there is a hope for the asylum seeker. Things will change. But Julia, based on all the change, what is the future of the asylum seeker? Do you think it's going to get better, or it's going to get tougher?
So we don't know what to expect. There are a lot of things in flux right now, and that includes our government. So we're having elections in November where US citizens can vote on who they want to be in charge, and that may change the policy depending on the results of that election. But there are also a lot of favorable results from the court system. So people have sued based on the work permit rules, and there's also lawsuits against the fee rules that are going into effect in October. So one hope that we have is that a court may stop these rules from going into effect or from being implemented. And that's definitely something that has worked in the past. For example, there was a third country transit ban that the government tried to implement, which we called the Asylum Ban Part 2, or, you know, they keep trying to end asylum. And a court put a stop to that. And that rule had made it so that anyone who passed through any country on their way to the southern border had to request asylum in one of those countries. And the court said no. And so that's not being implemented right now. So that's an example of a court victory and how courts do have a lot of power. And I think we can have a lot of hope in those institutions. But also these policies do change every day. We're getting new policies, but that doesn't mean it couldn't change for the better also.
Thank you, Julia. Okay, I want to go back to the first question about the rule change, because this one went to effect on August 25th. What about the people been here for a long time? The one didn't come to the port of entry or across the border. What about the if they decide now to seek an asylum? Is this going to affect them too, or just people after the August 25th? This is something I need to get more information about that.
So if you've been in it depends on the case, of course, as any lawyer will always say, but generally, if you have been in the country for more than a year and you're then filing for asylum, then you will be barred from obtaining a work permit under this new rule, because there's a 1-year deadline after entering the country for you to apply for asylum. But if you've been in the country, and let's say you have applied for asylum, but you haven't yet applied for your work permit, then perhaps you've already been here, perhaps it's already been a year since you filed for asylum, and then you could have filed for your work permit and perhaps get it soon. So it's all of these, it's a lot of date calculations and looking at what month and day and year you're filing for things. So there's no way to generalize, but certainly it's possible that someone has filed for asylum over a year ago and then wants their initial work permit, and then they may be able to get it.
Thank you very much. There is another question. They're talking about the new proposal to expand the use of biometric for the asylum seeker. Can you give us more detail?
Yes, so this is a proposed rule, which means that it is not in effect, and there's no date that we have that it would be in effect. So now is the time that people can comment on the rule, and ILAP will have information on how to do this soon. And what the proposed rule says, and this affects all types of immigration applications, is that they are going to expand their surveillance over immigrants and US citizens who sponsor people's applications for green cards, for example. And so this proposed rule it's very draconian. It includes collecting your DNA, your voice, your irises, so the way your eyes read under whatever fancy equipment they have, face scans, and other personal information. And virtually everyone who's involved in an immigration application will have those things scanned. And then the rule says it will be stored in the government database, possibly forever. So I expect there to be a lot of uproar over this rule for many reasons and from many people who might be concerned about the government surveilling people in the country because it impacts everyone who is on the application and US citizen sponsors. So what we can do right now is fight back against the rule, and that's by commenting against it. And we will have information about that soon.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll come to you, Deb. I need to make a comparison between what the General Assistant did in the past for immigrants till we get here. If you can give us maybe just people that don't know about the General Assistant, can you give us the main idea about the recent past of General Assistant until we get to this rule change?
Yeah, certainly. So I'll start. So before the LePage era, actually GA, so since 1983, GA didn't even take your immigration status into consideration. It was about whether or not you were otherwise eligible, whether you needed the assistance and you were able to prove that. During the LePage administration is when very restrictive rules and the statute came into play that said you're not eligible unless you are lawfully present or you're pursuing lawful process, which so that was the case. And then there was a more restrictive rule that didn't exactly reflect the statute for a while. But after Governor Mills was elected, she issued an emergency rule when we had the wave of new asylum seekers last summer that loosened the rule and made more people eligible. And so a lot of those asylum seekers are now eligible for GA. But it's a big concern, this 24-month cap. It's always been a concern, right? Because it limits the amount of time that people have to get these really basic necessities and urgent necessities for their families. But now it's just, again, I'll state it again, it's more urgent than ever in the wake of these new immigration rule changes and this administration. So that's where we're at, and that's sort of a short summary, but I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you very much. Julia, I'll ask maybe the same question. Some people, they just been here in the US, they don't know more about the different change these past 4 years. Could you please give us the severe change maybe we had back 4 years ago until we get here?
Sure, I think that I'll just start when the president took office, so not quite 4 years, but kind of can go over how this administration has attacked asylum. Really, in such recent memory, there have been so many policies that are designed to hurt people who are fleeing persecution. I'll just go through a few of them. So, for example, the zero tolerance policy, which separated thousands of children from their parents at the southern border. We're still seeing the repercussions of that, both in the families and children that were separated and that are still together, but also many of them are still separated. And it is a true tragedy that happened in the United States. Also, forcing asylum seekers to wait in Mexico when they're at the southern border seeking asylum. And that happened in two different ways. So there was a process called metering, where the administration said only a certain number of people can come through the port of entry at on a certain day. And so people got backed up waiting to get across the bridge to the United States, for example. And that has forced some to wait weeks and months. to get into the United States. And we've seen people in Maine who did suffer through that process. There's also another policy called the Migrant Protection Protocols, which is the Remain in Mexico program, where people would wait and then would not be allowed into the United States and forced to wait in Mexico for their asylum hearing. And we have seen hardly anyone get asylum under that. The latest study said 0.1% of people under that program actually got asylum, which shows that there are incredible problems with that process. It's clearly not giving anyone their day in court to explain why they're fleeing persecution. So that's another horrible policy. And then there's other little ways that they've been chipping away at asylum law in the United States, and that's by changing asylum law itself, by saying that someone who suffered gender-based violence or gang violence is no longer eligible for asylum, and other areas of law like that. And so we're really in a very low time in asylum in the United States. We're violating our duty as a country to people who are fleeing persecution and seeking safety in our borders. And I can only hope that this will change, but it has been a very, very awful 3 years for sure in asylum law.
Thank you very much, Julia. And Deb, another question for you. Things gonna get very tough for the general assistant. What do you, what could be your thought? How do they gonna handle the 1 year, the waiting period for the 365? What do you think? Can you give us a picture how things can look like?
I would encourage people the best thing to do is to reach out to legislators and to educate yourself. Again, this is the best time to educate yourself. And if you have family members that don't speak English, to translate for them when you see information, when you read up on what's going on. It's hard to advise someone on what to do while you're waiting that whole year before you're able to work. That's the problem. It's hard to imagine yourself in such a situation, and it's just unprecedented times. And the best thing to do is just to be out there advocating and educating yourself. And we're going to be doing our best trying to maintain access to these resources. So hopefully that, people won't have to worry about food, secure housing, and their health, because I think that everyone can agree that it's a problem. It's a part of this public health crisis that we're facing. And it's just illogical and immoral for anyone to not have access to those things in the midst of COVID, in the midst of these immigration rule changes. So I don't have a great answer because it's, again, unprecedented times. I don't know how to advise someone in that situation. I just want to assure them that, working with ILAP, working with people from the community, we're going to be doing our best. And I'm sure with the department is going to work hard with us and to come up with a solution that works so that people don't go without during that period of time. And work hard and really reach out to the department and legislators and seek help from ILAP and Maine Equal Justice if you're ever out and need necessities and need resources.
Thank you. That was maybe my last question for you. I was thinking, what kind of action do you think can be taken for to seek more help from people?
Yeah, so definitely reach out to your legislators. If you don't know who your legislators are, call Maine Equal Justice. We're happy to help you. And we have a lot of information on our website, mainequaljustice.org. Whether it relates to COVID specific information, we have videos that are recorded in different languages. If we don't speak your language, we're able to connect with someone who does and who could relay that information. Again, translate whatever information you have for your friends, family, community members. That is right to the department. Visit ILAP's website to get to that has a lot of great information on immigration law. And just be relentless in making sure that your voice is heard. Like, I think that it's just such terrible times. Like, the best thing, the best thing we can do is get motivated and get inspired from it and fight back. So that's what I would say people should be doing right now. And share this clip when you see it too. And read more about GA on our website.
Yeah, thank you very much. Before we finish, I would like to ask one question. This is happening in the middle of the pandemic. People are going through, I can say, emotional, a lot of things. But if you have to say something, Julia, because your organization help a low-income immigrants to improve their legal status. So what would be your advice at this time for asylum seeker? If you can give them a message, what would you say?
A lot along the same lines as Deb, which is that I want everyone watching this to know that there are people fighting for their rights to be safe and healthy, their rights to be able to access immigration law, and to also be empowered to know what's going on, to reach out for help by calling Maine Equal Justice or calling ILAP, and to know that there's a lot of people in the community who are really invested in trying to make Maine feel like a welcoming place, and that hopefully we will have more and more resources from the community set up for folks who are impacted by all of the rules that we're talking about, and to just, if possible, hold on to hope that things will change.
And Deb, what could be your message of hope based on the mission of your organization, if you have to give a message to somebody?
Yes, so Maine Equal Justice does a lot. We do legislative advocacy, administrative, and we do litigation. We have lawyers and policy advocates. So, and some of us speak different languages. So like, we're a resource for you. If we can't help you, we'll point you to someone who can. We work with really great partners like ILAP and Pine Tree Legal and Maine Immigrants' Rights Coalition. So and a lot of the staff come from the community, come from this. I came here as a refugee myself. So you have someone who understands what you're going through and who is fighting for you through that perspective. And you have a lot of dedicated and passionate leaders who are working tirelessly and who feel your pain. Compassion actually means to share someone's suffering, I think in Latin. So just know that we're sharing in that suffering, and we're doing our very best, and you have someone fighting for you, as Julia said. And we can only keep the faith and the hope right now.
Thank you very much. But we do have 1 minute before we leave, so I can talk to the French speaker. The people maybe would like to know better about what we're talking about, so I can give them just a summary and the main idea what we just said. Pour ceux-là qui ne parlent pas anglais, tout à l'heure, on venait de parler des différents changements qui sont intervenus au niveau de l'immigration depuis le mois de juin jusqu'à aujourd'hui. Et parmi ces changements, il y a l'attente pour avoir la carte d'autorisation du travail. L'attente, c'était d'abord 150 jours, maintenant ça devient 365 jours, qui est presque une année d'attente. Il y a aussi beaucoup de changements. Par exemple, si vous êtes resté pendant une année dans les pays sans pour autant appliquer pour l'asile, et cela aussi peut vous affecter, vous ne serez pas qualifié pour l'autorisation du travail. Et également les gens qui ont le criminal record dans leur background, ils ne pourront pas bénéficier aussi de cette autorisation. Alors maintenant, pour le General Assistant, cette situation aussi va créer beaucoup de difficultés, mais il y a toujours l'espoir que les choses vont devoir changer. Et si vous avez besoin d'informations, vous pouvez contacter les Maine Equal Justice et puis les ILAP, qui est Immigrant Legal Advocacy Project. Les gens sont là, ils parlent toutes les langues. On conseille aux gens d'aller demander, chercher l'information, quelle que soit la situation, aller demander l'information. Donc, nous espérons que les choses vont changer. Et, we are hoping, that's what I'm trying to say, things are going to change from now on. So we don't know yet, but I believe things will get better. So we're going to the end of our meeting. Thank you very much for for accepting my invitation. So if you do have maybe one word to say, I'll give you 1 minute before we end the meeting. Julia.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about these issues. And I just want to say Maine Equal Justice is a great partner, and the services that they offer, including when ILAP attorneys are confused about general assistance and other issues, they know their stuff. And so I highly encourage you to seek their help if you want to know more about that information. And then also ILAP has a lot of self-help materials on our website now. So you go to www.ilapmaine, Maine is spelled out, MAINE.org, and click on Asylum info at the top. And we're hoping to have more outreach where we talk about these issues in different languages and just try to get the word out as much as possible. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I believe that's the worst part. We need to go different languages so people can understand better. And Deb, what would you say your last word?
I echo what Julia said. I thank you for having us and letting us speak on these issues. I just want to stress again that there is hope. It's only up from here. It has to be. And Maine Equal Justice, ILAP, Maine Immigrant Rights Coalition, all these different organizations and community leaders also are working and fighting every single day. We're here for any information that you need. Reach out if you need to be connected to resources. And our website is mainequaljustice.org. We have a lot of information that is related specifically to COVID, but also we constantly update information on there regarding immigrants' rights and generally just low-income people in Maine. We're on your side, and please keep the faith. I can't say that enough. Don't be discouraged.
Thank you very much. Thank you for accepting the invitation. I hope maybe we can come back for more detail, more information next time. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Basibagira